Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the End Zone Enthusiasts. I'm Paul, and it's time for our Week 9 predictions. Can you believe that we are halfway done with the NFL season already there? And we're still trying to figure out sometimes which teams are good, which teams are bad. But before we get started, we are the End Zone Enthusiasts because we love amusement parks and we love football here. Today's shirt is a trip that I got to do, Hollywood amusement park. They do a special thing every year. This one was Monty Python themed with the shirt and stuff like that. But Holiday World is over in Indiana. It is an amazing park. It's themed after Thanksgiving. Believe it or not, they actually have a coaster called the Good Gravy. But they also have Halloween with Raven and Legend. And of course, they've got The Voyage, which is also in the Halloween section. They have a small Christmas section on July 4th and an amazing water park. But before we get started here, let's tell you how we did last week. We were 10-6 with our predictions. It started out really shaky in the beginning there. I picked Minnesota over the Chargers, but you know what? Got a lot better at the near the end of the year there, and we ended up 10-3. Overall, we were 78-42. So we're almost at a 75%. So that's pretty darn good. So without further ado, let's get into our picks. Now, first of all, we have a lot of bye weeks. Now, last week we had Buy-A-Geddon, they called it. Basically, if you had a fantasy football league, you had a lot of decisions you had to make last week. But this week's a little bit different. There's only 4 teams. But as you can tell, 2 of my favorite teams, Tampa Bay and Philadelphia, are off this week. So go Buffalo. The other 2 teams off are the Cleveland Browns, who need it, and the New York Jets, who need it. So you got 2 teams that are basically existing, and you got 2 teams that are fighting for playoff positioning here. But in the case of Tampa, they definitely needed it. Hopefully when they come back, they have a lot more healthier people. All right. So tonight's a Thursday night game. We start every Thursday night game. Let me change something real quick here. Boom. So the Thursday night game there, good old Amazon here. Here you got an interesting one now. In the beginning of the season, they thought the Baltimore Ravens and Miami would be a battle of first place teams or a battle of teams fighting for positioning and stuff like that. Now it's 2 teams. Both are trying to save their coach, and both of them are trying to get that 3rd win. So Baltimore at this point there has been riddled with injuries, but I've been hearing as of this morning that Lamar Jackson will be the quarterback. So that's going to change the dynamic a lot if he's healthy. Meanwhile, you got Miami, who last week, kind of a stunning win. Most people did not expect Miami to win that game, and they won it not even close. Last week, there was pretty much everything was a blowout except for Cincinnati and the Jets. So pretty much Miami dominated, believe it or not, last week, while Baltimore dominated on their end there. So they're both coming off their 2nd win of the season. And now it's basically 2 teams that are just trying to see if they can save their season. In the case of Miami, your season's done. More likely, Mike McDaniel's done. But you have pride in what you do. For Baltimore, because their division is so weak with Cincinnati being hurt, Cleveland being Cleveland, and Pittsburgh, even though they're in front, kind of winning with smoke and mirrors, they are still got a shot to take this division. No way they're getting a wild card, but they could still take the division. So this is kind of a more important game for Baltimore. So how's this going to go down? Baltimore now gets a win streak. They are going to beat Miami, and they are going to win 2 in a row. And if Pittsburgh stumbles, they can get even closer to regaining their part of being the top team in the division. Sorry about that. All right, next. It could go both ways, Bowl. This one is the Chicago Bears against the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, Chicago lost last week. And they lost in a way that you weren't really expecting them to lose. They lost their first 2 or 3 games, and they won 3 or 4 in a row. This loss here, could it be a streak or was it a blip? We're going to have to find out here. Meanwhile, Cincinnati, man, did they fall apart. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, the Jets came back and won that game, even though Cincinnati had the thing wrapped up for 58 minutes of the 60 minutes of playing time. Horrible loss for Cincinnati, and really kind of could have ended their season at this point. They still are in 2nd place behind Pittsburgh, but that win would have really taken a lot of pressure off them. That would have been 2 in a row with Joe Flacco, but losing the way they lost, that's devastating. So even though wide receiver wise, quarterback wise, I kind of like Flacco and I kind of like Chase and stuff like that. For this game, I'm going to say the Bears are going to get back on track. I just think that loss last week, you're going to have a hangover from that. And they were already having difficulties on defense. Now Trey Henderson's probably out again. My gut's just telling me it's going to be Chicago, so I'm going with Chicago. Next one is the NFC North battle, Minnesota against Detroit. Now, Minnesota had a butt-kicking loss to the Chargers last week on Thursday night, and they were playing Carson Wentz until Carson Wentz could not legally go anymore. He was hurt. He was hurt for about 2 games, but they didn't want to send J.J. McCarthy in there in that situation. Well, now I don't really have a choice. It's going to have to be JJ in this game because Carson Wentz is now out for the year. Not only did he tear his labrum, he also fractured his shoulder socket. So his career could be over with an injury like that. So they are looking for help. And with the trade deadline coming up there, I could see them trying to reach out there to get a backup quarterback because they kind of are going to need it because the way JJ's been health-wise, he can come and go. Meanwhile, Detroit was off last week, and Detroit, except for a ref game against Kansas City and a very slow start with the Green Bay Packers, I kind of lean towards Detroit being the most consistent and best team in the NFC. So that being said, you got a team with a rookie quarterback who's been hurt, no solid backup, going up against a fully healthy Lions team. Well, the Lions are going to keep on winning. Let's just be honest. The Lions are going to keep on winning in that situation every time. Next one is a weird matchup bowl. That's something I can really come up with Carolina against Green Bay. Now, both of these teams have been doing a lot better than people thought on both ends. Now, when they picked up Micah Parsons, people were saying Super Bowl, but of course, that's like the Tom Grassi's of the world. The reality is Green Bay had 2 great games and 2 really bad games, and then has been kind of dancing back and forth. They had a great victory against Pittsburgh last week, an emotional victory because, of course, Aaron Rodgers. Meanwhile, Carolina was on a 3-game winning streak, and then last week they had to put Andy Dalton in against Buffalo, and they got their butt kicked. It was brutal. Not only was the defense not able to stop the running attack of the Bills, but Andy Dalton just kept putting the ball on the ground. So fingers crossed, Carolina, that you actually have Bryce Young back. Who would have thought those words were exiting my mouth here? But if you got to go back to Andy Dalton, it's not going to be pretty. If you go with Bryce Young, you might get a closer matchup. But either way, the Pack stays on top. And what do I mean the Pack stays on top? Well, they only have 1 loss. So just like Indianapolis, they are the best team in the NFC, even though I think Detroit's better. Right now, record-wise, it is the Green Bay Packers. So you got the top dog, and I think they're going to keep extending their lead at this point with another victory. I'm shooting this way too early in the morning, guys. All right, the Get It Right Bowl. You got the LA Chargers, who won last Thursday, going up against the Tennessee Titans, who, yet again, the only team that has already fired their coach, even though there's a few more that should be coming along the way soon. So with this matchup, Tennessee at this point is just trying to not get Cam hurt at this point. There is so much work that needs to be done on the offense, on the defense. Special teams seems to be okay, but Tennessee is definitely a work in progress. They should get a top 3 pick. Meanwhile, the Chargers, they won last week. They're in a very competitive division there in the AFC West with Kansas City and Denver. So they kind of really need this game to make sure they don't fall behind Kansas City or Denver. And then also if one of those 2 teams, sputters a bit, they're able to jump in there and go for it. So not going to beat around the bush here. I think this one's going to be a Chargers victory here. I think it's going to be a big Chargers victory. I think Tennessee is just keeping their head down and is trying to get to the end of the division, testing people out, seeing who is good, who they can keep for next year. There's going to be a lot of trade movements and stuff like that. And Tennessee is a prime team to be losing some of their stars. The next one is Too Good to Be True Bowl. It is Atlanta against the New England Patriots. So New England Patriots, 2 games up in the AFC East. Who would have thought that in week 9 that they would be there? They have a 1-game lead, and then they also have the tie break against Buffalo. Now, of course, the tie break when they play again could disappear. So the key at this point is for New England to keep moving. Meanwhile, Atlanta, they beat Buffalo. They get shut out by Carolina. Last week, they looked horrible. You don't know what you're getting with the Atlanta Falcons. They are definitely the enigma team. They could come out here and beat New England and then lose to New Orleans the following week. So you don't know what you're going to get there, but you don't want uncertainty. You want our prediction. And our prediction is the Pats keep on rolling. So, and with a tough game coming up with for Buffalo, they can actually extend their lead to 3 games very easily this week here. But in this one here, you can't trust Atlanta. The truth of the matter is Atlanta is a team that they can win, they can lose. You don't know where they're going to be. So with that being said, you got to go with certainty. Next game is the Walking Wounded Bowl, baby. And that is the San Francisco 49ers versus the New York Giants. The Giants are not the same team they were in the beginning of the year, and a lot of it has to do with Dart. But a lot of that also had to do with Neighbors early on before they went with Dart and Scatterboo. With his running attack there, doing those upsets against the Chargers and the Eagles. The reality is you're just down the Dart, and you don't have an amazing backup running back, and you do not have a solid backup wide receiver. So offensively, they are hurting. Now, the defensive line is fantastic. Even last week against the Eagles, they kept pressure up on Jalen Hurts. A lot of sack potential on that end there. Meanwhile, San Francisco, the only team more beat up. Actually, I don't think any team is more beat up than San Francisco. You got Tampa, who has a lot of injuries. You have the young stars of the Giants going down. But really, San Francisco, their insurance policy has got to be maxed out. It's all, the deductible is now paid in full. So, but with that being said, San Francisco with Mac Jones has been finding a way to win. Now, I don't know at this point on a Thursday if it's going to be Mac Jones or if it's going to be Brock Purdy. We'll find that out there. But I think either way, the Giants are just too wounded that the Niners are going to keep going to victory. And you know what? With them, they keep winning. They're still in that race for the West. And a wild card. Seattle's close to them, and same with the Rams. So none of these teams are pulling away, and none of the teams are really falling apart. Next one is a battle of division leaders, but 2 different directions here. You got the Indianapolis Colts, who are the surprise team of the year. Best record in the NFL with only 1 loss at this point there. And even that loss was a tight win, tight loss on that end. Going against Pittsburgh, who is the best in the North. But it's not saying much. You got Cleveland there. You got Cincinnati without Joe Burrow. You got Baltimore for a while without Lamar. Pittsburgh, this is their division to lose. However, the way they were playing, they kind of could lose it. If Baltimore gets hot, Cincinnati gets hot, even Cleveland gets hot, they can still take this division here. So you got one team that has been infallible, playing great offense, special teams, defense, getting the wins, being consistent, and then Pittsburgh, who's you don't know what you're going to get every week. Well, yet again, consistency is key. Colts have the best record for a reason. It's going to be another one that they're going to be 8-1 at this point, and well-deserved. So Colts going to keep on colting. Next one here, this one's kind of an interesting one, either direction. So you got Denver and Houston. So Denver is one of those teams that have been getting some victories, but you're kind of shocked to see how they get it. I mean, they had that huge comeback against the Giants. And then last week they had a dominating win, but there's still question marks on defense, especially the corners, especially if you have Patrick Surtain out for any extended amount of time. So you got that. And then you got Houston, who was 0-3, 0-4, but it kind of turned it on lately. Now you're trying to see, okay, which team are you? Are you the team for the last 2 or 3 weeks, or are you still weak? This would be a great test for both teams. And with that being said, I'm going to say the Broncos are still going to keep the lead in the West. I just think Houston at this point there, with that lack of offensive line, is just, and really lack of running attack until Mixon comes back, if he does come back. So with that being said, I just think Denver is just at a different level and a much better level. Next one is weird matchup part 2. You've got Jacksonville against the Raiders. Now, the Raiders at this point are a crap show. I think Pete Carroll is not getting what he expected out of Geno Smith. The running attack, even though they spent a lot of money on that first pick, he's not handing out yet. And defensively is very questionable. Meanwhile, Jacksonville, The offensive line has been getting Trevor Lawrence beat the hell. 7 sacks the last 2 games in a row. Both were 7 sacks, 14 sacks in 2 weeks. They are on the bye, so that should help them heal. But yet again, like I said, that offensive line, if Maximilian Crosby can get through that line, he can cause a lot of problems for Lawrence. But that being said, I kind of got to go with the Jags just because they did have that bye week and because the Raiders have just been playing that bad of football. Next one here is a bye week bowl, I like to call it. And I call it the bye week bowl because for the Rams, it's kind of the same as having a bye week. It's the New Orleans Saints, who are not the worst team, but last week they started questioning Rattler. They've been jumping in that rookie. Now, quarterback-wise, you don't know where it can go. I feel bad for people like Chris Olave and for Alvin Kamara because this is the tail end of their career. Well, at least with Kamara, tail end of his career, and they're not even competitive here. Going against the Rams, who, even without Puka last week, lit it up. So with that being said, I think the Rams are going to get an easy win. Not just a win. I think they're going to get a pretty easy win. So next one is the game of the week, and it really is the game of the week. A lot of these matchups are strong team versus weak team or weak team, weak team. There's not very good matchups at this point here. So that makes the Kansas City-Buffalo game even more important. And the fact that this is not the Sunday night game or the Monday night game, it's kind of a bummer because this is going to be the marquee matchup here. You got Kansas City, who started out 0-3 and people were nailing them in the coffin. They're done, is now on a 4 or 5 game win streak. And they're going right into Buffalo. It's in Buffalo. And same thing with them. They had a shaky first couple of weeks, but they got the victories. Then they had those 2 losses in a row. They came back from the bye week last week, and they were dominant. So this is kind of a 50-50 pick here, but I'm going to go with the Bills because it seems like every regular season, the Bills do get this victory. The key is 2 things. First of all, are they going to be able to catch the Patriots to actually get a top seed? So Kansas City has to come to them. And like I said, it is possible. I don't see Buffalo not making it, but it is possible every week when Buffalo's having these matchups and the Patriots are having their matchups that Buffalo might at this point maybe be coming in as like the 5th seed wild card. And that changes dynamics a lot because yes, that would give them 1 home game, but for those big games against Kansas City, against Baltimore, against Indianapolis and stuff, you kind of want the home field advantage, especially if you're in Buffalo, and that can be slipping away. This is a must-win for Buffalo, even more so than Kansas City. Next one is the Sunday night game, Seattle against Washington, and these are 2 teams that I don't know much about. Seattle was 3rd, and then I dropped down the honorable mention on the power rankings. And the main reason for that is because I really don't know how good they are. Well, I'm going to be able to watch them finally on Prime Time, not just see highlights like I do over on Red Zone. So I'm curious to see how that is. Meanwhile, Washington, they are 3-5. They are a half game behind Dallas for 2nd place, and they are numerous games behind the Eagles, who have a bye week. This feels like a must win for Washington because if they get any farther, if they go 3-6, and the Eagles are 6-2, you can kiss the division goodbye. And at 3-6, I don't know if they're going to have enough to even make the playoffs. This is kind of a must win for Washington, while it's more of a keeping pace victory with Seattle. But with that being said, I think the Hawks are going to win this and keep with the lead, tied for the lead of the West. I think the West is definitely better than the East. It's a one-dog show. And I think Washington at this point, their season pretty much ends on Sunday night. And then last but not least, we got a Monday night game with the solo Monday nights. It's Arizona versus Dallas, Southwest battle going there. And, you got 2 teams that, they're better than their records, at least offensively. You got Kyler Murray, who has a lot of talent around him, but he's been a question mark most of the season. Meanwhile, you got Dak, who has the best offense, but their defense is so bad that they end up losing games here. But how do I think that's going to go? I think the Cowboys are going to win. Yep, I think the Cowboys are going to win. And it pains me to say because I love the nail deal on the Cowboys coffin. But I think at the end of this week, Dallas will be the only one who can catch Philly. So in conclusion, these are my winners. Baltimore over Miami, Chicago over Cincinnati, Detroit over Minnesota, Green Bay over Carolina, LA Chargers over Tennessee. New England Patriots beating up on the Atlanta Falcons. San Francisco 49ers are going to beat the Giants. Indianapolis is going to take out Pittsburgh. Denver is going to whoop ass on Houston. Jacksonville, in a tight one here, will beat Vegas. The Rams are going to beat the Saints. Buffalo, knocking on wood, is going to beat Kansas City. Seattle is going to beat Washington. And last but not least, Dallas is going to beat Arizona. Next week, Tuesday, we give you the results. Wednesday, we give you the power rankings. And then we do this for week 10 on Thursday. So once again, guys, fly, Eagles, fly, even though you're on bye. Baker's got to bake, even though he's on bye. And Buffalo, can you pull it off? Fingers crossed there.